The summer was 1947. We had just ended World War II, and we're entering the Cold War. Nuclear secrecy at an all-time high. The term flying saucer was all over the newspapers. Then Roswell happened. I'm open to extraordinary possibilities, but with that I need extraordinary evidence. And I want you to follow me along here because it's just not here. And when we walk through this carefully, I think you'll see why I believe this was a balloon. Did you know that debris sat in the field for days before it was collected? The rancher, the W. Mac Brazel, seen it in the fields and dismissed it initially, thinking it was pieces of a weather balloon or some other unimportant materials. And it went ungathered and unbothered for days until he started hearing more and more about this flying saucer that was all over the newspapers that summer. And he brought a piece of it into the sheriff for further inspection. And it was at that point that the military got involved. Here's where it gets a little crazy, because now you've got the military involved, and they come in with all these trucks and everything, and they gather up all these pieces. It looks like a very, very important mission. Okay? And if it was a weather balloon, which I believe, that project was top secret. Nobody knew about that. And we'll go into that a little bit later, Project Moby Dick, which wasn't even unveiled until 1951, but we know was being used well before that. So there's two reasons that the military could come in and pick up all these pieces. UFO? Yep, they'd pick it all up. Top secret space spy balloon? You betcha. Same thing. They're going to come in. They're going to swoop up all the pieces. That's what happened when he reported the items on the ranch. There we are so far. On July 6th, Mac Brazel brought the items to the sheriff. On July 7th, the military collected those items. On July 8th is that famous newspaper story that the military had recovered a flying disc. Why would they say that? So in 1947, flying saucer was already kind of a media buzzword for anything that was unknown. Okay, it was all over the newspapers that summer. And there's a really great possibility that the military, or the branch of the military that picked up those items, didn't know what they were. Project Mogul at the time was highly classified. Project Mogul operated from 47 to 49, and that was the high altitude spy balloons. Okay, it went under a couple different names. I think it was Project Moby Dick from 51 to 54, and then Project Genetrix from 55 to 57. Okay, but they were all these high altitude weather balloons. Okay, so there's a really good chance they didn't know what they had. Think about how they described the debris. Okay, like this tinfoil scattered over miles. Okay, these balloons were very, very large, very, very high, and they were held together in a train. Okay, which kind of explains that second crash site we'll get to in a bit. Okay, they were highly reflective because they were made to reflect radar. Okay, so far everything's kind of adding up. Here's what I think, and I could be wrong. But if you have this highly top secret program, okay, Project Mogul, which is high altitude balloons strung together in a train, okay, to spy on Russia during the Cold War, I don't think I'd want them to know about it. So maybe flying saucer was a quick go-to that they thought would just satisfy everybody and make it go away. Because like I say, nobody knew about this project when these came down, including the Russians. The retraction was almost immediate. Literally that same day, it came down from higher command in Fort Worth, Texas, that it was a weather balloon, to be changed to a weather balloon. Newspapers didn't get it out to the following day, which is going to be July 9th, and it posted that story, that what they found was in fact a weather balloon and not a flying a spaceship. So, but the change in narrative actually happened the same day, once that communication got further up the command chain. So far we have materials that most people are not familiar with being recovered from a field. that likely sat there for days because they seemed unimportant. Military came in, picked them all up. Flying saucer, retracted, weather balloon to hide the fact that it was an ultra high altitude spy balloon. So far everything tracks. And that was basically it for a long time. What a lot of people looking back on this event today don't realize is everything they point to, oh, the material, you could hit it with a hammer and it would bounce back, or the fact that there was a site 2 and there was bodies being found. None of these claims even came about until the late 70s or 80s. The Roswell incident, 1980, okay, that sparked all kinds of people coming forward with their own stories that would be 33 years old by that time, okay? Their memories or their recollections. Humans are funny, you know what I mean? Sometimes you'd be surprised what they'll say or do to get that 3 minutes of fame. I don't believe it. I don't. If there were alien beings, okay, you would have known it that day, okay? They've already said flying saucer, so we're going to come out and say we got aliens too. No, it doesn't happen 33 years later, okay? That's where all these great, fantastic stories happen to emerge, was the 70s and early 80s. The second crash site, okay? There was a second site of debris, all right? These balloons, when working properly, run at around, I think it was 50 to 125,000 feet, and they worked in a train. There was more than one balloon, and they were hooked together to suspend that kind of weight of whatever that surveillance equipment was, okay? And if these balloons are going to come down, and they're tied together in some sort of a train, they are going to be quite the distance apart. They're going to be materials that people have never seen before, especially probably the surveillance unit itself, okay? No flying saucer was recovered or ever recorded. No aliens were ever recorded. And I'm talking physical evidence. I'm not talking a 33-year-old memory, okay? There's nothing there. I really, really wish there was. Nothing more than I'd like to believe there's people out there keeping an eye on us or better than us or smarter than us. I want to believe, okay? So this isn't about that. It's just this isn't it. I believe this was a mistake made by a lower-level military unit that was sent in to clean up the debris. Somebody talked to the newspaper ran with it. Again, as soon as it made it up the chain of command, that change was made to a weather balloon, which it was a surveillance balloon. I don't know, you know what I mean? They are different, okay? And quite possibly the last time the government's been so honest with us. But that fits. The evidence fits. Everything fits that story and that narrative. Nowhere in there can I find anything, and I've looked in a lot of places, of one piece of evidence stating otherwise, other than stories, bad memories. That's people, opportunists, somebody trying to breathe life into an old conspiracy theory. That's all I see. That's all I can find. From a technical standpoint, a classified high-altitude weather balloon fits the evidence better than any other exotic explanation. From a trust standpoint, the miscommunication in the very beginning is what's fueled this myth for 80 years. On a positive note, that incident is responsible for bringing in almost $30 million a year of tourism, museums, and retail sales to the local area. And quite possibly the catalyst to all the UFO movies that I love. The documentaries, true or false, I watch all of them. And for that we can be thankful if you're a science fiction lover like myself. In conclusion, do we really think we are not exactly where they want us to be? If they convinced us that there was never any aliens, would we quite possibly give them the freedoms and the money that we allow to them now? If they were able to convince us the aliens were real, would the population be able to handle that kind of information? We seem to be right here in this Goldilocks zone where I believe they want us to be. And that's what's important here. You need to ask yourself what would benefit them the most. And I think it's right here, what you see right now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.